afternoon, Howard Wiig, Code Green, ThinkTech Hawaii on March 15th, 2021. We've got new territory to explore today, namely getting solar energy into high rises. How in the world do you do that? Well, little background. Hawaii was the first state in the nation to declare a goal of 100% clean energy by the year 2045. Sounded very, very radical a few years ago when we first came out, but lo and behold, California followed us. California usually leads the way in everything. Not this time, Hawaii was number one. And by George, we're charting our path, our progress towards that goal. And so far, we're a little bit ahead of the game, but we are picking the low-hanging fruit at the moment, both in terms of renewable energy, primarily solar, and in my field, energy efficiency, doing more with less. Best example of energy efficiency is that you can take a brand new refrigerator with all the new bells and whistles, and it consumes about 450 kilowatt hours a year. Take that same size refrigerator, 25 years old, with virtually no bells and whistles, 1,400 kilowatt hours a year versus 450. That's a very dramatic example of what efficiency is all about. And we're making heads and shoulders progress on that field. But today we're going to talk about solar. Hawaii on a per capita basis absolutely positively leads the nation in the number of solar water heating systems, and now PV or photovoltaic, and with storage batteries. Why do you need storage batteries for solar systems? Answer, you get your best production in the middle of the day, say between 11 a.m. and 3:30 p.m., but nobody's home at that time. You don't need that electricity. When you need it is in the evening, when everybody gets home. And then when we have tourists again, then all the tourists will be flocking back to their hotels, turning on all the room lights and then going down to the bars and restaurants and so forth. So we need the storage. So we've got that pretty well solved. What we don't have solved is the fact that over 40% of all Oahu residents, maybe it's much higher than that, live in high rises. How in the world do you have occupants of high rises utilize solar energy? Think about it. There's nowhere to put it. Oh, wait a minute. There is somewhere to put it. And to describe that, we have the Honorable Anthony Amendola, COO of Energy Advisors. Welcome to the show, Anthony. We are truly honored to have you on board here.
Aloha, Howard. I'm truly honored to be here. Thanks for taking the time. And we'll give a quick plug for where we're broadcasting live from the Central Pacific Plaza Tower in downtown Honolulu. They're one of our most favorite banking sources. They've been with us for the past 5 years, among others.
Yeah, good
so,
plug there.
Aloha, and looking forward to talking about how we can. Yep. So we're good to go. But that's a great, what you were talking about just before you introduced me is a great segue into what we're trying to accomplish, Howard.
Precisely.
For sure, as you mentioned, the simple examples that you gave of energy efficiency on the island is outstanding, and it's not a complicated reason. It's just that power is so expensive here, as you know. I mean, on the mainland where I am, when I'm on the mainland, which is less and less these days, but in the Seattle area, you're talking 7 or 8 cents a kilowatt hour versus Honolulu, which starts at 26 cents. Maui's at 31, Big Island's at 40. So you've got just an incredible cost of energy. And then you've got the need for air conditioning in most commercial applications 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the combination of those two creates a ton of opportunity in Hawaii to be, more carbon neutral and just financially it makes sense. That's where we come in, right? We're trying to show businesses on the island that there's a financial carbon neutral goals. So that's let me kind of talk about
Sure.
the program a bit.
Give some background
I'm sorry.
as to your give some background as to what your business is all about here.
Yeah, so Energy Advisors has been in this market now for about 5 years. My partner and I, Jay Filer, started about 5 years ago, actually more like 7, and then made the commitment to Hawaii about 5 years previously. So we were able to plug in fairly quickly. And what we're doing is really focusing on the program that we have now is this Solar Assist program for nonprofits. But in general, as you mentioned, what we're trying to do is combine renewables and typical energy efficiency, which not many are doing, not none that we know of at this point. We've brought those two pieces together because there's such a powerful result financially and from an energy savings perspective. And so for the past 5 years, we've been applying that mechanism on the island. And just recently, over the past 6 months or so, we finished a very successful project at the Maunalani Nursing and Rehabilitation Center on Oahu. That was a combination. It started out with some regular energy efficiency, but then solar PV made a ton of sense, which it does for most commercial, industrial, and obviously nonprofits on the island, that we can come in and use renewable energy to reduce their energy spend quite a bit. And so the way we do it, let's just talk story about Maunalani for a minute about how that came to be. We were approached by a solar installer on the island. Hey, we have this great PV project up at Maunalani. It's going to save them a lot of money, but there's also efficiency to be done inside the building. So what we did is, as you and I have talked, is you want to reduce before you produce, right? So you want to reduce your energy spend.
I have not heard that phrase, reduce before you produce. Wow.
That's right.
That's one. Yeah.
Right? Because it makes sense, right? You don't want to just slap a bunch of panels on a building and walk away, and then you've kind of defeated the purpose of making that building more efficient because you didn't even look inside the door. So we do it a little differently, but the solar drives everything, right? And so the other piece of this is that keep in mind nonprofits, because of their tax status with the IRS, cannot take the investment tax credits that are available. And remember, in Hawaii, you not only have the 26% federal ITC that's been extended for at least 2 years, but you've got a 35% Hawaii investment tax credit that is also there. So between the two, you're up over 60% of a discount just from investment tax credits. But alas, nonprofits can't take that. So their only option is to do a typical power purchase agreement, which many have done, or look at our mechanism for doing it through a service agreement. And there's a substantial difference. The main difference is that
Anthony, let me interrupt. I believe you have a slide of the Maunalani, so we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let's kind of show that for a second. So this is the project that we just finished. A great location. It's a fabulous place for seniors and those who need some assistance. And so again, what happened here is they had a great PD project that had some efficiency that needed to get done inside the building. We came in and we put it together for them. We used the solar, and the efficiency inside. Um, the solar project and the efficiency inside combining is going to save Monolani over $83,000 a year for the next 15 years. And they didn't have to spend a dime to get there, right? That's an important thing to understand. No capital up front, right? So we have developed great relationships on the island with Central Pacific, First Hawaiian, Bank of America, Bank of Hawaii, and now we're working with American Savings Bank. So what they'll do is they fund energy advisors. We've created our Kama'aina fund for the island. We then fund the project. So we paid for all of those improvements for Monolani up front. We then we installed the interior efficiency. We installed the solar PV for them, start to finish, turnkey. We fund everything during project. They pay nothing. When the project is complete, when the PV system has been connected by HECO, then their service payment to energy advisors starts. And the interesting thing at Monolani, Howard, is that we did not need to use 20-year term. That's another benefit of our approach, is that we can do a shorter term, a 15-year term for the customer. But Monolani elected for the 20-year term because they didn't want to touch the panels. They didn't want to have to clean them, service them, maintain them. So under our approach, which again, the nonprofits typically don't have a huge facility staff, right? They don't have a bunch of people running around. So the benefit is we can install the new technology, the new PV, and anything else that might come along. We then service it for that term. So Monolani doesn't have to touch an LED light for 15 years, the PV for 20 years. We maintain it, we service it, we monitor it, give them a report every month. So they're excited because they get to see, hey, this is the amount of kilowatt hours that we saved. And that translates into carbon reduction for those folks that are interested in that. And for Monolani, they're going to save over 4,000 metric tons of carbon during the term of the service agreement, which is compelling for those who are interested in keeping this planet as wonderful as it is. So there's a lot of benefit for them. So they're getting the monitoring. And what it kind of highlighted to us is the great need that there is in Hawaii. And when you talk about nonprofits, it's as you mentioned, it's AOA, it's all the condos. They're all set up as nonprofits. It's a lot of the assisted living, nursing homes, senior centers. It's several of the credit unions on the island. It's a lot of the hospitals on the island are set up as 501c3. So they all can't take those investment tax credits. So therefore, for them, solar is much more expensive than it needs to be. Now, again, Monolani, what happened at Monolani, again, to go back to that example, is they had a comparative power purchase agreement. And the way it's priced in the world of solar with PPAs is cents per kilowatt hour, right? So we were able to beat the PPA rate by at least 20-25%, which is dollars into the customer's pocket, because then we can pass those savings on to the customer, and they're reducing their spend to HECO even more because the service payment is lower than it otherwise would be under a power purchase agreement, the payment per month. So there's a lot of reasons for nonprofits to look at this. And if you're just on a dollars and cents, if you can decrease your operating expense by $100,000 to $300,000 a year, and we're finding that on many we're looking at, that makes a big financial impact. So just to kind of, when we're kind of talking through this, to kind of summarize, some of those benefits, again, for the nonprofit, no capital, and this really works for everybody, but this program we're focusing on is the nonprofit world. No capital up front, which can make a big difference between doing and not doing a project. when the project is complete, your service agreement in just about every case we've looked at is less than the amount that you're no longer spending with HECO. Meaning your HECO savings per month are larger than what the service payment is. And we do that purposely. We want the customer to be able to have some additional cash coming off beyond the service agreement to create a little maintenance fund for whatever else they want to do. So, we're able to get all that done for them, and they're paying less than they would be paying HECO now. And when you think about solar panels, Howard, right, you started a 25-year warranty. So our agreement's only 15 years. And again, if you have a long-term vision, which most of these do, after years 15, all that production is yours. You keep all of those savings that you get from HECO. And so panels have a 25-year warranty. We're looking at 30, 40, 50-year life cycles. So it becomes a really interesting proposition for both reducing operating expense and making your facility a lot more efficient, just in general.
And from our standpoint, we're getting closer and closer to zero net energy, or to towards a carbon-free economy, which is ultimately what we're after. Now you mentioned,
just a quick comment. When you talk about that, right, we're all talking about living wage jobs, right? Installing PV and other energy efficiency improvements and battery storage is a very nice living wage job. And it is both helping the families as well as helping the island. So it's something that we're excited about from that perspective.
Now, from these, just looking at the Mauna Lani some more, did you need to put the storage into there? Because you probably have a pretty hefty daytime demand.
Yeah, so storage makes sense in, battery storage is evolving quickly on the cost, just like panels did 4 or 5 years ago, where it's coming down quickly. But in some cases, it still doesn't make sense. The cost of the battery storage versus the cost savings for the nighttime load in the case of Mauna Lani was not there yet, meaning the cost of the battery would outstrip the savings they would get by having that nighttime load. Now, having said that, we're looking at several projects now that will have battery storage, because you're right. In a lot of cases for the AOAOs, as you said, they start washing clothes at 6, turning the lights on, cranking up the air conditioning, and then there's no sun. So in that case, battery storage will make sense. And so we're looking at that in several of those locations.
But for any health facility, the place is going to be chock-a-block full and going full blast in the middle of the day. Therefore, they're absorbing all of those nice kWhs that are being produced.
And depending on the operation for healthcare, absolutely battery storage will make sense, because if they have any kind of overnight stays, then obviously they're running all night long with lights. They're running all night long with air conditioning and machines. So in that case, and again, the battery market is really evolving quickly and really becoming much more competitive. With the way Tesla came in and others. So so it's starting to make a lot of sense in some very specific situations.
Now you mentioned
fund all of that.
About the efficiency inside. Did you just swap out fluorescents for LEDs, or did you have more measures that you took inside?
Yeah. Well, what we're finding, there are a lot more measures that you can look at. It's not just lighting, it's the electrical system, it's transformers, it's mechanical systems. I mean, there's a lot of what we typically will do is go in and do a full preliminary audit of the facility and determine what makes sense and what doesn't. And so, that's again in Hawaii historically, and it's not much different on the mainland. The infrastructure of these buildings is older. It's in need of repair. And with technology now makes all of those items that much more efficient, that much quicker.
I gave the example of a refrigerator, but air conditioning systems now are much more efficient than they were, say, 20 years ago. So if you went into a building, you have a 20-year-old HVAC system, it probably makes sense
Mhm.
to swap that out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so part of what we do again, the spearhead is the PV, right? The PV comes in, and think about, because PV produces electricity, produces savings for the customer. The non-renewable inside the building saves energy, saves money for the customer. From our perspective, they're both the same. If I can produce a kilowatt hour or save a kilowatt hour, from the customer's perspective, that's one less kilowatt hour that they're buying. So we use the solar a lot because the solar, again, because it's Hawaii and the sun and the climate and everything else, it produces much more than it needs to pay for itself.
Yep.
So when you start being able to bundle, the beauty is we can take all that excess production from the PV to pay for those things inside the building that may or may not pay for themselves in every case.
Good.
Right, so the customer gets this overall more efficient building, and they're saving money on the bottom line because they're using a lot less power.
Yeah, and in many cases, you're also getting a healthier building because, especially by swapping out an old HVAC system, you might be delivering a cleaner air to the interior.
Absolutely, that's one of the byproducts of being more efficient in the building, is you're going to have a much more comfortable space for your tenants, residents, patients, whoever that may be. And that translates for real estate guys, that translates into dollars. When you think about the assisted livings, right? It's a very competitive market to draw folks in there, and it's not cheap anywhere you get.
Yeah, and the word you mentioned, comfort, certainly these people are in this building 24 hours a day. You want it to be comfortable. And with a
Absolutely.
modulated HVAC system, you can deliver just as much cool air as is needed exactly when it's needed, and save
It's
in the process. Yeah.
absolutely. And so the message I would want everyone to take away from is, don't, when you're thinking about your building, that solar really helps you get to other places, and don't think of them as two distinct items, saving energy and producing energy. They're really the same in the way that we are able to package it. So there's so much PV that hasn't been done on the island in that CNI market, that there's a lot of opportunity for turn.
And you mentioned Hawaiian Electric. How does the installations require a lot of interface with Hawaiian Electric?
From our side, from the customer side, really nothing. We take care of all of that, but there is an interconnection that occurs. There's certain steps you need to take to determine how much, if any, power is going back to the grid. So yeah, there is a pretty it was a pretty strong process with them. But again, energy advisors and the way we do it is we handle all that for the customer, but that is an important piece of it.
And you probably established good relationships with certain people within Hawaiian Electric also, so that you know them and they know you.
That's correct. So because we're using only local, well-known, reputable partners in the process of, it's helpful because those folks know a lot of the account managers there. They've worked together. There's a symbiotic relationship. So that really helps it because as everyone that does any kind of business in Hawaii knows, HECO can be a little time consuming, to say the least.
We certainly are 100% on board with this clean energy goal that we have.
Yes.
Very
well,
good.
Yeah, and you asked me a question earlier. yeah, PC. And so what folks can do now is that, currently in the legislation, and this happens every few years when budgets are tight, is they're starting to look at the Hawaii state tax credit versus PV. Renewable energy. We do not want that to go away. And so
Definitely.
anybody out there that, let your congressmen and senators know that it's important to the island.
Mhm. And we've only got about a minute or so left.
Okay.
Do you do any remote PV installations where you can't put the PV array in the property or on the roof, so therefore it's a remote somewhere? I know that's coming down the pike.
Yeah. I mean, that's out there now. We'll put it on the building. We'll create a carport. That's pretty popular. A lot of folks have
Yeah.
open parking, a lot of sun. They don't. It's so you can create a carport with the solar. We're looking at one where there's a lot of creative ways to do that. So absolutely, just because your roof line doesn't carry it, that's not the end of that discussion.
Oh, and finally, we're about to wrap up. A slide, please, if you could bring up that last slide to give you
Yes.
the cost comparison.
So yeah, I'll just take a minute. Thanks, Howard. So just to show the folks out there, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but this profit, remember, you can't take the investment tax credit, and then you have to also budget the O&M. Cash versus a PPA is the second bar, which is about 23% less overall, versus using the service agreement, which again, because we're not using a tax equity, we're using local banks who have the appetite, we can offer a much more economical approach. And so you're talking about 40% less for the service agreement versus paying cash for a nonprofit. So it does make a lot of financial sense. And that's that's the basic idea is we're making sustainability profitable in Hawaii, Howard. That's the idea.
Yeah.
That's the only way it's going to work if we can make a profit. Right?
Especially, government funds. Well, I was going to say government funds are not exactly available. State government funds certainly aren't. But what we want to do is get the private sector involved. That's where both liberals and conservatives can totally agree. Get private sector money in there. Yeah.
Right.
All
that's right.
And
all of the Hawaiian banks are the ones we're working with. It's part of their it's part of their operation to be able to make these type of funding mechanisms to help the island. It really helps everybody. It creates jobs. It saves energy. It makes us more carbon neutral. So all the way around.
Sounds wonderful, and that is a very, very cheery note upon which to close with Anthony Amendola of Energy Advisors. Thank you so much, Anthony. This has been really, really enjoyable. And that's it for
and when we can finally start having lunch together, we have to get together in person so I can
absolutely in restaurants that serve sit-down meals. What a concept. Yes.
There you go. Yeah, what a concept. Okay.
ThinkTech Hawaii. Thank you very much.
Mahalo.
See you next time.
And aloha.